This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Becky Thomas, and Jessica Black from the Mac's List team. This week, we're talking about how to write a 21st century resume. Thanks to new technology, you can build an online resume that will help you stand out and manage your job applications. And you can even learn who looks at your resume. Our guest expert this week is Titus Blair from AI Resume. He and I will talk later in the show about how to make the most of these 21st century tools. You see a job you want. Before you apply, you want to learn more about the position itself, but you don't have an email address for the hiring manager. Ben has found an online tool that can help. He tells us more in a moment. What should you say about your professional skills that don't relate to the desired experience in a job posting? That's our question of the week. It comes from listener Wendy Lynn in Talent, Oregon. Becky shares her advice in a moment. First, as always, let's check in with the Mac's List team. And our topic this week, gang, is the 21st century resume. And our guest, Titus Blair, will share ways listeners can use online resumes to attract employers, measure engagement, and stand out in a crowd. How have you all seen people use online resumes effectively? Any examples come to mind?
Well, I think we can all think of like the really cool looking resumes that we've seen like featured on BuzzFeed, the top 10 resumes ever submitted, things like that. And I think those can work, particularly if you're in like the tech field and you're showing off like, look how well I can program this website. I remember one that was particularly good. It was like a video game this guy designed, and every like world you got to in the video game, you learned a little bit more about his background and how he designed it and how he built this, which is really cool. But I think for most people, that's probably overkill. And I think the best thing you can do if you're kind of not in the tech field is spend some time thinking about keywords and really making sure that you're pegging the right language and keywords that employers are looking for when they type into LinkedIn or into Google the kind of candidates they're looking for.
Yeah, I think the point about using your resume to showcase what you do, like I was thinking about a couple different ones. One is I have a friend who's like a visual designer, and so she incorporates some of her personality and some of her sort of visual style into her resume. And then I have another friend who sort of has two different backgrounds, and she created like a super simple personal website that just had her resume, a little bit about me, sort of crafting that narrative in a way that's pretty easy for an employer to sort of take a look and be like, okay, here's what this person is about, here's what the value they offer, and sort of like a broad resume of like, the basics. Because I think the challenge with online resumes is you have to be somewhat broad because you're not going to change that every time you apply for a job. Like that's sort of like your baseline, right? So I think it's good to sort of have that solid foundation for what you have on your online presence, like whether it's on a website or on LinkedIn or whatever it is. But that's when I feel like people are doing it right, was when like they have sort of like they know their identity and they've got it sort of showcased on that online resume.
I'm glad you brought up the personal website because
people are doing that so much now, and I think it's great.
I do too, because it particularly if you have a common name, it helps you stand out and it makes it easier for employers to find you. And we should be clear, we're talking about something different than a LinkedIn page here, and a LinkedIn page should not be a resume. But an online resume or a personal website can let you create something very similar to a resume and also not only attract the attention of employers, but link to your social accounts and help with SEO and draw attention to your work.
Yeah, I sort of see it as like your homepage, like here's me, here's my resume, here's how you can contact me. Super simple, but it showcases sort of some of your style.
Yeah. But I like your point that to some extent your online resume can also be a reflection of the work that you do.
Yeah.
So if you're a designer, you're showing off your design skills, or if you're a computer programmer, you're showing off some of your programming skills by having a real flashy site.
Yeah. but only when it works for you, right? Like not just because you want to be flashy, but you're like a librarian. Not that librarians can't be flashy, but you know what I mean.
Good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to say the exact same thing about the personal website, and that's where I've seen it done the best. But I think, again, I am just reiterating what you all have said about it works for most, when you have the specified industries. It's harder if you are a little bit more of a generalist and you maybe are customizing your resume and you kind of fall in between a couple different industries and you are customizing a lot more, but it is a good jumping off point. And it's I think it's always good to have that, like you guys said before, have that visible and have that showcased of, presenting yourself in that way. So
Great. Well, good. And I know Titus is also going to talk about why you not only need the online resume, but how you can use it to engage and track who's coming to see you and use that information to connect with employers and ultimately get a job.
yeah, I'm really excited to hear about what he says about that because I think that that's the key to the online resume is the analytic side of things rather than just a static, on your personal website is wonderful, but you don't really get to see how people are interacting with that. So that'll be really interesting.
Yeah. Great. But first, we're going to turn to Ben, who's out there every week, poking around the internet, looking for tools, books, and websites our listeners can use in a job search or career. So, Ben, what have you uncovered for our listeners this week?
So this week I want to talk about one of the challenges that a lot of job seekers face. So we always tell people, like, to the extent you can, always send your application and your resume to the hiring manager. Find their email address and reach out to that person. But unfortunately, many job descriptions don't include the name of the hiring manager, let alone their email address. And so it can be sometimes a challenge to dig around and find the right email address. And so the resource I have this week is a web page that is called How to Find Anyone's Business Email Address. And this comes from the website marketingprofs.com. You may remember way back in episode 20-something, I talked about a similar resource, and that was called verifyemailadress.io. Now, that was a tool where, if you were going to guess someone's email address, you could, put it in and see if the internet pinged that and if it was a real email address. That was kind of a guessing game. And I think that's still an element of finding the right email addresses. This website tells you how to do a little bit more sleuthing. So you're making educated guesses about what that email address might be. And lo and behold, the secret of finding people's email addresses, does anyone want to guess what it is?
The person's name at whatever the domain is.
Well, that's a good guess. But the secret tool, lo and behold, is Google.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
But it seems too simple.
Yeah, so did I.
All
That's
right.
why I was like...
Google's the answer to everything.
Of course.
And Google has the answer to everything. So basically what this post does is walk you through how to use Google in a really systematized way and how to use some of their special operator functions to find email addresses. So things like searching specific websites for data instead of searching the entire internet, or kind of how you use quotations and the and sign and other kind of Boolean search features. It's a really cool tutorial to go through that search process if you're not familiar with it. And in addition to kind of showing you how you can start doing searches to figure out what is the email address that they use for internal staff positions, things like that. At the end of it, they also go back and reference those email checkers that I mentioned before. So you can kind of figure out, make that educated guess, and then plug it into an email checker and see if it actually pings correctly. So again, until hiring managers start putting their email addresses on their job descriptions, or at the very least putting their email addresses in their LinkedIn profile, which I still think is a best practice, this is the best tool you can use to go out and find that email address and get your application right in front of the right person at the organization. So again, this is How to Find Anyone's Business Email Address, and it comes from marketingprofs.com, and the full URL will be in the show notes.
Nice.
Great. Well, I know that there'll be a lot of interest in that because that's a question we get a lot. How do I track someone's email address down?
Yeah, and I would just ask everyone one more time, if you're listening to this show and you've got a LinkedIn profile, and you should have a LinkedIn profile, please put your email address in the summary section of your LinkedIn profile because it makes it so much easier to find and contact you if it's right there.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Great tip, Ben. And if you've got a suggestion of your own for Ben, please write him. We'd love to share your idea on the show. Ben's address is ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to you, our listeners, and Becky is here to answer one of your questions. Becky, what's in the MaxList mailbag this week?
So this question came in via Facebook from Wendy Lynn of Talent Oregon. And she asks, when customizing a resume, should you leave off skills that don't match the job or just downplay them? So this is a good question and totally relevant to our topic today. So you definitely are on the right track that you want to customize your resume based on the job that you're applying for. There's a couple things to keep in mind here. The first one is you need to customize as much as you can for the job at hand. So I would get as specific as you can about the skills that they require, and that's sort of the priority. That's the first thing you want to do. So, whatever the skills that they really want, whether they're saying like required skills or whatever it is, think about that and like get as specific as you can. So if the job, for example, is focused on email marketing, you show all of your relevant skills. So all of the things that you've done specific to that job. So for this one, it would be like content creation, email templates, list management, automation, and like list all the tools that you can use specifically within that realm. So like design tools or software tools that you have used that are specific to that job. And these are direct skills and they're the priority. So that's what you want to focus on. And then, once you've got that down, you may not meet like all the requirements. You might not have quite enough to flesh out your resume as you're customizing for that specific job. And that's when you think about the skills that you have that don't directly match the job. So the thing to think about here is most of your skills are probably transferable in some way. And we've talked a lot about transferable skills on the podcast, but it's basically like you break down the tasks that you've been doing to like the basic skills that they require. So for the email marketing example, you might still list a past job that's not marketing or email related at all. Like if you were a barista 5 years ago, you can still reframe some of the skills that you used to show that new employer how those skills helped you get ready for the job at hand. So like how is your barista experience relevant to your email marketing job that you want? Maybe you were in charge of ordering supplies at the coffee shop and you had built like a spreadsheet of all your orders and what was running low. Instead of writing managed supplies and ordering for the shop, you could write created a detailed tracking system to automate supply purchasing for the shop, cutting down ordering time by 25% or whatever that might be. And that might sound like a fancy way of saying what you actually did, but what you're really doing is tailoring that skill that you have and that you used for a previous job and tailoring it towards the job that you're applying for, because that task, it shows that you're detail-oriented. It shows that you know how to simplify processes. And these are both skills that you need to be good at the email marketing job that you want. So, you can sort of be flexible and frame your skills in a way that you're proving to the new employer that you can do the job. And there's a lot of ways to sort of break down those transferable skills, because I know sometimes it can get sort of weird and sort of gray area. And I did find a worksheet online from PSU that gives you you look at the key responsibilities in the job, and then you can break down your past experiences and how you might frame those skills for the new job. So I'll include that link in the show notes for you. But I think that'll get you pretty far into that question. And, if you do have a skill that you're just like, this has no relevance, I would probably leave it off unless you're like brand new in your career and you don't have any other experience on your resume. Then you should definitely list everything that you have done professionally. But later on in your career, you have some flexibility to sort of mix and match and get as customized as you can. So that's my advice. Do you guys have any other thoughts there?
No, I think that everything that you said was great. I was gonna just say the same thing of customizing is excellent, and I think use your best judgment, kind of what you were saying, Becky, of if you think that something's completely out of left field and it's not relevant to this job at all, maybe, and you don't have enough space, maybe leave it off. You never know where those things might come in handy, where they may not have fleshed out the job description as much as they intended to or whatnot. And you may list a skill that you have that they are going to see and say, oh wow, that's actually going to make this candidate so much better than we weren't even thinking about that skill.
Right.
And so you just never know. And I think that sometimes it can show your well-roundedness, and that you, again, what you were saying about the transferable skills, being able to show how your past experience has just brought you into a stronger point of view and a stronger place to be able to do this particular job better.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. At the end of the day, you only really have the job description to go off of. And so, obviously you want to give whatever most real estate in your resume to like the skills that they're talking about in that job description. But if you've got some extra space, there are so many skills that like every employer wants, whether they articulate them or not. And I just pulled up a website here of 10 skills that every employee should have, and we'll put this in the show notes. But things like communication, customer service, empathy, organization, problem solving, our ability to research and gather information, and teamwork. And if you've got some experience that speaks to those skills and you've got the space in your 2-page resume, then why not throw them in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great advice, and I really like the fact that you dug up that transferable worksheet or transferable skills worksheet.
It's
Becky.
such a good thing to just sort of write things down, and it's going to help your process a lot, Wendy. So good luck.
Good. Well, great. Well, thanks, Becky, and thank you, Wendy. I think this is the second time we've had a question from Wendy on the show, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks for asking.
Great. Well, I know we've sent her a book once. I don't know if we should send her a second one.
She told us she didn't need a second one. So, yeah.
Okay.
But she likes the first one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, if you do have a question for Becky, please email her, and her address is becky@maxlist.org. You can also call our listener line. That area code is 716, and then it's Job Talk. Or send us a message on Facebook like Wendy did. However you reach out to us, if we use your question on the show, as we did with Wendy, we'll send you a copy of Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. And we'll be back in a moment. And when we return, I'll talk with this week's guest expert, Titus Blair, about how to write a 21st century resume. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Titus Blair. Titus Blair is the founder of AI Resume, a technology company that helps job seekers stand out, manage job applications, and see who's really looking at your resume. Titus has built and run several successful startups. He's also been featured on major television stations and in national newspapers and magazines. He joins us today from Ormond Beach, Florida. Titus, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Now, Titus, our topic this week is the 21st century resume. And can you tell us, our listeners, what we mean when we're talking about 21st century resumes? What does that look like?
That's a good question, because people have never really heard of it, because we're used to using the 19th or 20th century resume, which is like a printed item that you mail in or email.
Yeah.
And the 21st century resume is more of a resume that is dynamic, engaging, uses modern technology, and is able to, you can track it, watch what people are doing.
So what are some common examples that people might recognize when they go on the web? What does it look like in addition to those features that you mentioned?
Well, if you've ever been to a really well-designed site that's responsive, it means you can expand things and good colors and good design. That is the core of what the AI resume is. It's to make sure it's a very engaging, good-looking resume, first of all.
Okay. And to be clear, we're not talking about LinkedIn profiles here. This is a standalone microsite. And I think for many people, what often comes to mind are personal websites where people might describe their professional experiences and maybe include portfolios of work. Do you have other examples in mind in addition to those personal websites people might use in their job search?
Well, yeah. These days, there hasn't been much revolution in resumes. So when people think of resumes, they're just thinking of the static resumes. And like you said, there are sites like Strikingly and stuff that people can make their own designs. So it's kind of like having your own resume that's hosted online that gives you a lot of information that you never get normally from your resume, which that's the useful part about it. So it's it's like a resume in the cloud. That would be a good analogy.
Okay. So you talked about the features of an online resume, and let's talk about how, when you want to do one, how do you get started, Titus?
Well, yeah, for what we're talking about today, because I like to give people skills regardless of whether they would use the AI resume. And there are some key components of a 21st century resume that I can cover if you want.
That'd be great.
There's automated nature, there's intelligent, data-driven, and engaging. So those four things are kind of and we can talk about it if you want more information about each one, about how you could make a 21st century resume on your own.
Yeah, why don't you take us through that? And the people who are listening are saying, okay, it's automated, it's intelligent, data-driven, and engaging. But I'm sitting at my computer, I want to do this. How do I get started?
Yeah, if you wanted to try it out, you could go to airesume.com and then you would just sign in and put in your resume details. So it's really simple in regards to getting an AI resume going.
And I know that's your site, but I'm thinking of, are there other sites that people can use or ways they can apply these principles in building out a 21st century resume?
Definitely. Talking about those four components, they kind of go together. So if you want to automate, one of the things you should do as a 21st century resume is you need to automate your job search. So that's kind of like the first component, whether you use AI resume or not, that you would like to do. And a lot of people can go on sites like Indeed, Monster, and there's things called job alerts. And this is a way for you to kind of get a new job in your email every day related to things you're looking for based upon your location. So the first step I recommend when you want to do a 21st century resume is get your job search automated by using job alerts.
Oh, great tip. And I know in addition to emails, you can get those often, depending on the site, as text messages too. What about intelligence? You mentioned that as the second of the four qualities of a 21st century resume. How do you make your online resume intelligent?
That's a great question. You need to send it off to college. No, I'm just kidding.
I like that.
Yeah. You send it off for training and it comes back and it's a lot more intelligent. Really, these days, a lot of people do different things. Sometimes they'll have a professional look it over. I also recommend that in regards to what I do is you need to study the companies that you're applying to. Look at their feeds that they have on Twitter, any social stuff they have, things in the news. Use Google Trends. So you kind of get intelligence about the company, about the position you're applying to specifically. And then when you write your cover letter and you're putting in your job skills, that you make sure to put that in there specifically targeted using that intelligence that you've learned about the company and the position, so that when they look at it, you kind of fit exactly the role they're looking for. And also you show that you understand and have done some homework about the company. So that's part of like putting intelligence in. We also use artificial intelligence and other technology to do some cool stuff, but that's kind of complicated. I'd say if you want to do stuff on your own right now, get as much information about the company using social media and other channels and Google Trends specifically, so that you can really make your application targeted for that company.
Okay. And just to paint a picture for our listeners, what you're doing this research and you're creating a unique resume for that application. And it may be, Titus, could it be that if the application requires it, you send it in as a PDF or an online form? But do you also recommend that you take that unique resume and post it online and share that URL with the employer too?
Definitely. Yeah. The reason you want to have some sort of link where you can direct people is because you can track that link. When you give someone a PDF or a document, there's no real way to track it, like what they're doing with it, how they're looking at it. So you definitely want to find a way to, and I recommend this to people who are using the AI resume, because we do generate those links for people, is that when you write your cover letter, because there's a lot of automated systems when you apply, and they'll ask for a cover letter, so you can upload it. And I recommend that you put in the cover letter, hey, I've designed this custom resume for you that's targeting exactly why I'm a good fit for the company. Love you to take a look at it. Then you provide the link. So the cover letter is kind of like a landing page into your real resume, and a lot of that really converts well.
And so let's talk about the benefits of that, because I think that brings us to your third point, which is that these 21st century resumes are data driven. So it's good to know, you provide a link that someone has clicked through, but what else can you learn by using this approach, and what are the benefits of doing that, Titus?
Well, that's a great question. And this is the really exciting part about technology today is if you can direct someone to your custom resume, then what you can do is you can capture a lot of information. You can capture what they look at, how long they spend. For example, like if they are looking at your skills area and they really focus on something, a particular skill, you will know, hey, they're very interested in that. If you get a call, you'll know, hey, this is something we're going to be talking about. Also, you can see how many times and from what locations someone accesses your resume. So if they're passing it through the team, if you're applying for a job on the East Coast, but they forward it to the West Coast, it's possible they may have positions there that are a good fit for you too. So you get really good information about how they're engaging with your resume.
Okay. And so you had mentioned engagement being the fourth value. Anything else you want to say about the benefits of engagement that you get from using an online approach like this?
Oh, yeah. And I want to tell you a quick story real quick.
Sure.
About data-driven. I think you'll like it. So a long time ago, I created the AI resume for myself because I was just tired of sending resumes out and never knowing, what in the world was happening. Was anybody looking at them? It was kind of discouraging. So I built it so that I could track that. And I immediately saw that the resumes I sent out were being viewed. And what was really cool was I could see and estimate based upon this data-driven information when I was going to get a call. So I would look at it and I'd watch, and all of a sudden I get 10, 20 hits in a couple of days on the same resume for a company. And then I get a call or an email, and I was not surprised. I knew it was coming in.
Yeah.
And then also after, right before I did the interview, they'd hit my resume a few times. So I knew that they were kind of taking a look at it. And then here's the great part. A lot of times after an interview, you never know, okay, was it good? Was it bad? Did they like me? Did they not? And I would know if they liked me or if there was a second interview coming up, because all of a sudden my resume stats would blow up. Like I would see a lot of hits after my interview. So I knew, okay, they're really looking at it. They're getting more serious. And that usually was a good precursor to getting a second call or in the end, a job. So that was really exciting.
Well, I know you all offer services for people who want to create these kinds of resumes at your company. Are there other off-the-shelf tools that people can find online that can help them set up an online resume and provide these kinds of tracking features that you can recommend as well?
Yes, and that goes right into the engaging part of the 21st century resume. So there are sites, and you can look them up when you search. Look up like there's Wix, which is Wix, or Strikingly. They let you build like your own little custom page, so you could custom design it how you wish. And those will also, there's some plugins and things you can use like Sniply, and they let you do some pop-ups and things. So pop-ups are really cool for the 21st century resume because you can have messaging pop up at certain times or after they visited a certain amount of time your resume. And then video, like YouTube. Everybody who's listening today, I got to tell you, get a video of you on YouTube for like talking about your skills, and I would customize it for each application you do. I can't recommend this enough. When we hired AI Resume, that's part of a requirement when you apply is to do a video. So I would recommend that. Gives you a good cutting edge advantage when you say, hey, so-and-so company, I would like to apply for the job. This is some skills I have, because sometimes you can say a lot more than what you can write down, and they can convey your personality a lot better. So those some free sums to recap for you. There's some free things you can do. Strikingly and Wix are kind of for your own custom design. Sniply is a good like custom pop-up company. And then also you can use Google Analytics, and there's companies called like Crazy Egg or Kiss Metrics that you can use as well for analytics for your 21st century resume.
Great. And just to go back to video for a moment, any tactical recommendations, Titus, about the length of a video like that and key points that people should make? I'm guessing it's probably a few minutes in length, and it's talking about who you are and why you want the job. But what have you seen in your experience be effective when people are creating videos like that?
Well, it's going to sound funny, but not to make like a cookie cutter, because I have gotten videos where it's just like, hello, and it's been sent to like every company. So you got to make sure you customize it. So the length, to me, most people are engaging up to a minute. Think about a movie trailer pretty much. So you want to keep it really short, but also address specifically how you can help the company and your passion for what you're going to be doing, the company itself, and the work you're going to be doing. Because coming off as being boring and not interested is also going to show them that you may not be interested in the position, or you might not be a hard worker or excited about what you're going to be doing. So definitely come across as exciting and passionate about what you're going to do, and that you really want to serve and help that company.
Okay. Well, a lot of the principles that you've laid out here are things that I think are timeless, like, creating custom resumes, thinking about the needs of employers. But the tools have changed, haven't they?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, and what you get, by the way, never before could you have, right now you can actually watch with AI resume, you can watch what people are doing in real time on your resume. So if I send it out, I can watch if a future employer looks at it, what they're doing exactly. So it's pretty amazing.
Great. Well, terrific, Titus. It's been a great conversation. Now tell us what's coming up next for you.
Well, what's coming up next? Well, I love to travel, so I'm going to be traveling with my family. We travel all around, and of course, I'll be growing AI resume and speaking about that. So just exciting times ahead and enjoying the sunshine in Florida.
Great. Well, I know people can learn more about you and the work you do by visiting airesume.com. And I know you have a special offer for our listeners at airesume.com/contest/maxlist.
Yes, it's very. We're going to be giving away. There's a pro version, which is like the works, everything you can imagine. Plus, we're going to. I personally am helping people get a job. I will help them. Those who win will have me personally helping them with what I know.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Titus. I've enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for being on the show.
I really appreciate it. It's been great here.
You're welcome. Take care. We're back in the MaxList studio with my colleagues. And what were some takeaways you all got from my conversation with Titus?
Well, the main thing that I got out of it was the fact that the current resume process is really outdated. Like realizing how many tools are out there that we can optimize our resumes, to really get like audience data and like who's looking at it. And like the normal way is just to like write it in a Word doc, save it as a PDF, send it out, and like you have no idea. So I think there's so many possibilities here, and I think that it's something that is going to only be growing for the job search industry, and that employers are going to start expecting more of this sort of interactive, this interactive experience from the applicant. So I think it's definitely on job seekers to learn more about this and explore and figure out like what they can do for their own job search.
It's a good point. As you talk, Becky, it reminds me of websites, and I'm dating myself, back in the mid-'90s. And we thought, it's so cool that we can reach all these people, but we didn't understand the real value. The real change was that you could actually eventually see who was coming, what they cared about, and that gave you insights into how to serve them better.
Right, yeah.
And engage them better.
Yeah, I think that's just like, this is the evolution of that, is everything is becoming that way.
Yeah.
There were 2 points that I really like. First was his emphasis on creating a video, which I think
I thought that was interesting too.
I mean, I've seen people do like video resumes, and sometimes you roll your eyes, but so we know that an employer, the first thing they do is Google you if they're interested, right? They want to get some background information. And it just so happens that one of the highest ranked Google results is going to be video. So if you have your name on a Google video, imagine how cool it would be if the employer types in your name and the first thing they see is a video about how they want to work for you, right? It's just like this little piece of marketing, and it's a gimmick, but it's a gimmick that would totally work. And I really like that idea. I also really like the idea that you can see like when an employer is coming and looking at your resume and like how often they're looking at it. And it reminds me of kind of like LinkedIn. You can see the people on LinkedIn who are checking out your profile. I remember last job I applied for, which, do you know what employer that was, Mac?
Max List?
It was Max List.
Yes.
And I could tell that I was getting some traction with the employer because like first you looked at my profile and I saw that. And then after my first interview, like everyone else in the organization looked at my profile. So I was like, okay, there's something good's happening here. Like they're checking me out, and hopefully they're not turned off by the profile photo. But yeah, like it's cool that you could do that with your resume as well and get some really good analytic feedback from that process.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a data-driven world right now, and automated and all of those things. And I think what he said about the 21st century resumes being automated, intelligent, data-driven, engaging, those are all really important areas. And I know you mentioned this in your interview, Mac, about having an intelligent resume in terms of customizing it to the employer's needs specifically and doing your research. And, he mentioned doing your research and all of that. And that's something that we tell job seekers to do now. And that's something that's expected. But I think that the data-driven component of it is just going to, what you guys have all said already, is just going to make a huge difference, both for the employers and the job seekers. So it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how this evolves, because I think it's still in the early stages of being relevant, but I think it's already really relevant and really exciting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I agree with you, Jessica. It's early days.
It's
important to become aware of these principles and think about ways you can apply them.
Yeah, you don't want to be the last adopter, still hand delivering your resume places.
Yeah.
And if you start doing this stuff now, you can get good at it while other people are still doing the old way. And, once it's mainstream, you're going to be really good at it, So it really only behooves you to get on it.
Yeah, good. Well, great. Well, great feedback, and enjoyed that conversation with Titus. And thank you all, and thank you, our listeners, for downloading today's episode of Find Your Dream Job. If you like what you hear, please sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, we give you the key points of that week's show, and we also include links to all the resources mentioned, as well as a transcript of the full episode. Subscribe to the newsletter now, and we'll send you our new guide, The Top Career Podcasts of 2017. Discover all the podcasts that can help you find a great job and get the career you want. Get your free newsletter and podcast guide today. Go to maxlist.org/topcareerpodcasts2017. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Mark Babbitt. He'll explain what you must say in a job interview in order to earn the offer. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.